Hi friends, welcome back to my channel, Life is Tiff Knows It. This is Tiffany here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to add a brim to a knitted hat project. First, before we start on the actual process of creating the brim, which is a relatively easy task, let's talk about the length of a brim. I would not say that there is like a generic rule of how lengthy a brim is. I personally like to make longer brims, and it depends on the loom you're creating too. The rule of thumb I use when I know that I'm ready to make a brim is when the length of yarn kind of exceeds around the loom itself. So if I was still creating this and there was like a hole here like this, let's say it wasn't that long, I would continue going until both ends or all the sides kind of can touch. And another way you can visualize the length of your brim, it's pretty easy, is you take whatever work you've completed thus far and cut it in half. So because that's actually what we're going to be doing to create a brim, is to just fold our completed project over the length of the loom and attach it to every peg, which I'll just be showing you here right in a little bit here. So right here, I would say I have about 25 stitches or rows that I've done. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. 23 rows on this particular hat. However, it is definitely going to depend on the thickness of your yarn. The rows are going to be thicker, which can make it longer. So instead of going by a number of rows to determine your brim, I just really am a fan of eyeballing it and seeing if I feel that this would be a good length for a brim. So the first step we're going to do is what we've done last. So we created these rows, and we need to push the bottom or the top row down to the bottom as if we're going to create another row as normal. And instead of looping our yarn, our working yarn around the pegs, we actually are going to use our first row to attach it to each peg. And this is a little bit of kind of a longer process to do, but what I usually do is it doesn't really necessarily matter your starting point. What does matter is you're really looking, let me see if I can zoom in here, to find the first row that you created. And you're going to see that within the yarn there are weavings just like this, where the yarn weaves in and out. So like I said, it doesn't necessarily matter where you start, but you're going to take each and every one of these little weavings on your first row. And I like to use my hook to find those and put it around, attached to each peg. And we're just going to continue to go around the loom here. Oops, I guess I didn't pull those down. You can do this with your fingers. It's really a preference thing. But you're trying to grab each and every different strand on your first row that you created to loop on to each peg going around here. It's okay to stretch the yarn out a bit. That's going to happen. Sometimes it's kind of tricky to find where the first row is. And honestly, if you make an error with what the first row is, it's not a huge deal. No one's going to notice. But yeah, you keep going around and it will come undone. You just got to reconnect it here. Going around all of your pegs here. Oops, let me scoot that over. Yep, and this is going to be true with any stitch that you do, that you're always, if you're creating a brim, you're always doing the same motion. Usually when you're starting a stitch on a hat too, it's going to look very similar, because most likely your first row around the hat is going to be an E-wrap. This stitch in particular is an E-wrap. And the reason in which you create a brim for a hat is part of it is kind of a preference for if you like the look of a brim, but with certain stitches like an E-wrap, the hat is naturally going to curl. So I kind of just like to create a brim to kind of avoid that curling motion. Not necessarily that like curling is bad, because if you don't create a brim, what's nice is if it's curling up, the person wearing the hat can, it won't curl when they're wearing it most likely, or they can create their own brim, which can kind of give freedom to the length of the hat. But the other thing that a brim adds, a benefit to a brim, is it adds warmth, definitely, and then a little bit, it makes the hat tighter so it will fit on the person's head a little more nicely. If you're not sure of the size of the recipient's head, this will allow the likelihood of it having a snug fit. That's the benefit to a brim. Okay, and as we go around here, you might see that the loops in the brim does not necessarily add up to the number of pegs. And I find that to be okay, as long as you're looping like, I'll show you what I mean if it happens, but as long as there is yarn in front of each peg, that's what you want to create the brim effect. If you miss a peg, what's going to happen is it's going to appear as if there's a hole, which is what you are trying to avoid. So we're kind of ending here. See, this tends to happen where there's only one loop left. Might have meant you missed something along the way. That's okay. So you see how right here I have two. Oops, that means I didn't put bottom over top here. If you're seeing that there's 3 on one, that just means you forgot to do your bottom over top action in the last stitch. But even if this part that I looped onto 2 pegs, that will be okay. It's not going to look cosmetically any different than if you had one around each peg. So I do like to check around the loom, ensure that I have yarn on every single peg. And then I'm going to treat this as if this is just a normal, oops, that's the tail of yarn here that's getting caught on my tripod, as if this is a normal row that you created. And then you're just going to do that bottom over top motion that you would most likely be doing. Again, this is a E-wrap stitched hat. And just going around the loom like business as normal. And then your next stitch is going to be absolutely the same. I'll show you as a visual though what the brim now looks like. Might speed this part up for you. Okay, perfect. So now, as you can see, you have a beautiful brim here. The way it's sitting on the loom, it looks slightly twisted. That's going to definitely go away as you continue working on the loom, and it's just you go back to whatever stitch you are doing. This also can be an opportunity to finish or to switch up your stitch if you'd like to. A lot of hats have a different stitch in the brim than the body of the hat, so it's really a preference of what you like. But yeah, that is how you make a brim on a loom knitting project. Thank you guys for joining me on this adventure, this loom knitting adventure. I hope that all your projects go well. If you like the content that you're seeing, please like, comment, and subscribe. That means the world to me. And I'll see you in a future video. Bye, guys.